Hey everybody, Dr. Emily Hartsfield here. So today we're doing a chat with Dr. Kate about mental health and our emotions and how that relates to our hormonal health and our fertility and a few other things mixed in there. So Dr. Kate, you want to introduce yourself and kind of let everybody know what it is that you do?
Absolutely. So hi guys. So Dr. Emily and I went to school together. I'm a naturopathic doctor like she is. I am so thrilled to be on this video with her today because Dr. Emily has such a wealth of knowledge about fertility and natural hormonal health. I, in my practice, see a lot of teenage and adult women, and we often talk about using nutrients to optimize both their hormonal health and their mood. And so I think this is such a synergistic conversation today because they often overlap with fertility issues, as Dr. Emily is going to explain in a minute. But my passion really is to just help people get the things that are keeping them from living their best life out of their way. And oftentimes that's a health issue. So it's my joy to help people remove those stumbling blocks so they can live the life of their dreams.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, when we're working with patients, really finding that root cause for, what is going on makes such an important difference. And it's something that, I think a lot of conventional doctors just tend to overlook. They're all about treating the symptoms. And so, you know, for the like longevity of a patient's health, really figuring out what's going on with them, really just has such a bigger impact in their lives. So, when we talk about root causes of stress, we sort of get into this vicious cycle and we're not really sure, or at least for me anyway, it's like, is it like a chicken or an egg scenario? Like which one came first? Did the stress cause, did the emotional, whatever issues are going on, whether that stems from a trauma or what have you, did that cause a physical symptom? And then is that sort of looping back into this sort of stress, physical symptom, cycle, or was it, a physical symptom that created the stress and it's just sort of compounding and compounding. But regardless of what's going on, being able to suss that out is important. Being able to find that root cause, whether or not it's an emotional trigger that's starting it, and being able to help the patient resolve that, or if it's a physical symptom, a physical barrier to their emotional health, being able to, suss that out and be able to help your patients feel better is always really important. And so, I always, when working with patients, I always like to ask, what was your stress like to begin with? Before all this started, like, where were you at? What was going on for you? And, especially with my fertility patients, I'm always like, okay, right now, for the fertility journey in general, regardless if you just, started and you're just, getting going, and or if you've been sort of at it for a while, can be stressful. And for a lot of the patients who have been, on their fertility journey, it can be extremely stressful and it can take a toll on its own. And so for them, I always like to make sure that we are being mindful of that, but also I want to know what was their baseline, because stress can actually impact your fertility in a really major way. We have cortisol, a hormone that our adrenal glands produce, and, we can, when we're in a state of stress, it elevates, which under normal conditions is good and healthy for us. But under chronic, long-standing conditions, this elevation of cortisol, can lead to several things. For one, it can actually do sort of like this cortisol steal, where it actually steals the resources necessary for your other healthy hormones, your other sexual functioning hormones, testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen, to actually be sort of shunted in this cortisol pathway. But also the cortisol itself can have negative effects on your fertility. It can affect your ovarian function. It can affect your insulin sensitivity throughout your body. These are all major players in, ovarian reserve. You might see this in patients with PCOS. And so making sure that we're being mindful of what our patients are going through, from a physiologic and emotional standpoint is always really important.
Yeah, I love that. And guys, if you are some of my patients and this will start to sound familiar because you'll remember us talking about how all of your hormones are made from cholesterol, but that includes cortisol. And so if you are under a tremendous amount of stress and you have a tremendous amount of inflammation, you're making tons of cortisol, that leaves less room for the important progesterone and estrogen and testosterone that you need to amplify your fertility and your hormonal health. And so I love this, Dr. Emily, because I think a lot of times there can be a lot of focus, especially in medicine, on biomarkers and like, where's your estrogen? Where's your progesterone? Are you ovulating? What's your LH, FSH? And in that, we can really lose the person, right? And so you want a doctor where you walk in who's going to say, how are you? You know, and I'm not just asking because I want to assess your level of stress to see how it's going to impact your fertility, but like, because this is hard. And I know that it's hard. So it makes sense when we're talking about optimizing your fertility, optimizing your chances for natural conception, to manage stress as part of that, because not only because we care about you, but because stress can impact you biochemically. So I love that. It makes a ton of sense. Now, in my practice, we teach people a little bit about physiological stress as well as emotional stress. So Dr. Emily, is this a good time for us to get into some of the physiological stressors that can impact fertility?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, great. So guys, mostly my patients who are tuning in are probably women, but we're going to talk to everybody right now. So many of you guys have heard about conditions that can cause women to lose their cycles or to have suboptimal fertility. And when we're trying to draw in my clinic a connection between nutrition and lifestyle and stress and fertility, I often use like a pretty extreme example to help bring it home. And one of those is what's called overtraining syndrome. So when female athletes are training either for a marathon or half marathon or weightlifting competition, or they're very athletic, and their caloric expenditures outpace their caloric intake, right? So they're burning more nutrition and fuel than they're taking in. Women can actually lose their cycle. So they'll stop ovulating. And while that might feel extreme and you might feel like, okay, I'm not a marathon runner, you know, like that probably has nothing to do with me. I want you to think about if you may be pushing yourself, not sleeping enough, not resting and recovering enough, not getting every single nutrient that you need in a day, which most people, I think Dr. Emily will agree, until people come in our office and we do a nutrient analysis for them and we show them this is how much potassium you're getting, this is how much calcium, magnesium you're getting, they have no idea the gaps in their nutrition. It's so common, guys. Like, I'd be willing to bet you money you probably don't get enough potassium every single day. And that has effects, right? Like on your hormonal health. We can see it with athletes and we can see it in everyday people. So one of those physiological stressors that could be impacting your fertility is overtraining, overstressing, undersleeping, undereating. And Dr. Emily, you had something to say about this. I think even just in terms of like, if you're only even a little bit underweight or overweight, a change in a couple pounds, you were telling me about the research.
Yeah, there's, you know, when we are working with, you know, females and males, both of them, you know, when we're working with someone and they're like, well, you know, I still am getting my period, you know, but what does that period look like? You know, is it really, really light? You know, are you kind of spotting through it? Or are you never really getting like a good flow? You know, that could actually be a sign that you're still, you know, overdoing it. And, you know, even if you don't think you're sitting in this extreme category, you know, even just a little tweak, you know, maybe, you know, you're adding on a couple hundred calories a day, which, you know, may seem like a lot, but when you're talking about your overall health, you know, maybe adding on a couple of pounds, you know, maybe taking out one day of training or, you know, lessening the intensity of the training and what you're doing can make such a huge impact in, you know, your hormonal health. And obviously it's going to also impact your stress levels, your cortisol levels. It's going to have an impact on your mood too, because I feel like some people who kind of sit at this borderline area where they don't really have any like overt, like, you know, oh, this is so obvious, this is what you're doing. When they are sitting at that borderline kind of spot, you know, just doing these small tweaks can make a really big difference and a really big impact in what, you know, how you feel and what's going on with your body. Sometimes when you are in that overexertion phase, it can stress you out and can lead to, anxiety or emotional issues that you may not really realize are there, until, you do these small tweaks and then you're like, oh, I actually feel a little bit better now. Because kind of like you said, your hormones are actually made from cholesterol, and you need that fat. You really do need that fat to be there. I think fat gets such a bad rap, for it's gotten a really bad rap for so long, but you really do need a lot of good healthy fats in your body. You really should be sitting at an optimal weight. When we talk about fertility, it's all about optimizing and stuff like that. And so we're not just saying it because we're trying to be nitpicky. We really are saying it because, there are sort of like these optimal places you want patients to be. If you are borderline, you may not think it's going to impact you, but it really can.
Well, and that's the sweet spot of functional medicine, right? It's just like that little amplification of one area of your health can make all the difference. And guys, we see this practice all the time. Like, this isn't theoretical. And if you're sitting here and you're someone who is struggling because you feel like you're overweight and you're under training, I want to reflect to you too. I see so many patients come into my practice who are overweight, who want to lose weight. And part of it is because they are not eating enough and their metabolism has dropped down into, right? So they're eating 800, 900 calories a day. They're not losing weight. They're sad. They're tired because their cells don't have enough energy, right? Like, they're eating a lot of low calorie stuff. So it's super high sugar. It's causing an insulin spike. Their metabolism is all out of whack. And really just getting them back to this place where they're actually eating more. All my clients complain that they're full. They're too full. The first couple of days when we put them on like a Mediterranean diet that's tailored for them. So this doesn't have to be hard. And sometimes it's just, it might not even be a weight change. It might just be changing how you eat. That can take some of that stress off of your body, because when you don't eat for hours, your body has to pull stored fuel from your liver. And it uses the same substances that make cortisol, and so DHEA and adrenaline in your adrenals are used to mobilize that stored fuel. So again, that's kind of stealing from that progesterone and estrogen and testosterone you're making. So 1,000,000%. So overall, your cells need to have enough energy. You need to have enough cholesterol and body fat around. And then the other thing we talk about too, because I see so many patients with mental health in my practice, a lot of times we'll use clues about what's going on with your mood to shed some light on where you might be deficient in certain nutrients. So Dr. Emily, we chatted about vitamin D is something that we screen all our subfertility patients for, because there's evidence that if you have levels below 75, actually, if you're trying to optimize fertility, that can impair it. And low vitamin D is hard to pinpoint, right? A lot of us think we're getting enough, but if you guys actually look up the top sources of vitamin D in the diet, they're cod liver oil, animal liver, and fatty fish. And
Nobody's eating that.
You have to eat a ton of those to get enough vitamin D, and most Americans aren't.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that, but that means you have to be supplementing. But before you supplement, you have to test and see where you're at.
Yeah.
So they've done studies where even with IVF, correcting people's vitamin D deficiencies can increase their chance of a successful conception and pregnancy by 10%, right?
Yeah, which is huge for IVF.
Huge. And this is a no-brainer, guys. Easy to test and easy to find a supplement for. And again, like, you'll see low vitamin D show up as like impaired immunity. So like you're getting frequent colds and infections and flus. If you are a young woman and you have osteopenia already and you're premenopausal, you may want to check your vitamin D, because if your vitamin D is low, you're not absorbing calcium. That's another clue that your vitamin D might be off. If you have seasonal affective disorder. And then again, you can kind of assume if you don't go out in the sun very much and you don't eat those high vitamin D foods, you're probably low. 92% of American adults don't get enough vitamin D from their diet. And to make enough from the sun, you'd have to have your full body exposed to bright sunlight in the middle of the day for 15 minutes. And like, I don't know anybody who goes out at their noon lunch break naked to sunbathe for 15 minutes. I don't know if you do, Dr. Emily, but
during the summer I did. But then there's also the component that you have to take in latitude too. So, those that are in more northern latitudes, even if you're in the middle of summer and you're fully exposed, you're still only getting a fraction of the amount of UV light that's necessary to even produce a proper amount of vitamin D. And it's like those that are in the southern latitudes really don't have an issue. When you're out in the middle of the summer, and you're wearing shorts and a tank top or a t-shirt or a bathing suit, whatever, can guarantee you're fine.
Well,
But then what is going on when it starts getting colder? Or, you know what I mean? And then you have to take sunscreen into consideration as well, because that actually can block the UV rays from being absorbed by the body, and so there's a lot of factors that play into this.
well, and guys, don't just assume, right? Like, it's a $60 test. It's so easy to test. There are like little tests you can do at home now that we can order for you. Like, it's
Yeah.
so don't assume, because most people are low. And you actually need much higher levels. Like 30 is the cutoff for most MDs and DOs, what they consider to be a deficiency. But when you're talking about
That's way too low for me.
yeah, you got to be up around like 75,
Yeah.
80. So the other thing that I was going to chat with people about is, so part of what we're trying to hammer home for you guys, and I'm looking for my charger because my computer let me know it's going to die, but is that you might be sitting here thinking, I am depressed because I can't get pregnant. I am depressed because this is so hard. And what we're trying to encourage you to think about is maybe the depression is actually alerting you to one of the reasons that it's so difficult to get pregnant right now, right? So really try to respect the signals your body's sending you, and don't just assume that it's all because of the stress or fertility treatment that you're going through. It could be a clue. The other thing that we talk about in my practice a lot is, sure, you're feeling stressed and maybe some sadness if you're going through some treatment for your fertility, but the other thing that can make you depressed is low thyroid. And low thyroid hormone is so intensely linked with fertility issues, right? So higher rate of miscarriage, inability to conceive in the first place. It's one of those things that if you haven't been screened, you must absolutely get screened for thyroid issues. And some of you are going to come back with autoantibodies to your thyroid, and that's going to explain things. And once you treat that, you'll be able to conceive and carry to term. But others of you might just have functional low thyroid. And it may be because you're not getting the nutrients in your diet that you really need to make enough thyroid hormone. So those are things like iodine and selenium and iron and zinc and trace minerals that are quite difficult to get in the diet unless you're really intentional. You have to eat like Brazil nuts to get enough selenium, nuts and seeds, really like well-grown vegetables that are actually grown in nutrient-rich soils. And then tyrosine, which is an amino acid. And so if you aren't eating enough protein, then you probably aren't making optimal levels of thyroid hormone. So again, like, this is another thing. Some of the biggest indicators that you have an issue with your thyroid, you'll have depression, weight gain, you'll feel cold, just very sluggish. You'll have issues with your hair. So again, like, this is something that a good functional medicine doctor will be screening you for. But also when you're thinking about like how stressed you are with getting pregnant, don't just assume if you're feeling depressed, it's because of that. It could be because of your thyroid.
Yeah, there's so many, like you said, there's so many different players that it can be affected. I can say that, I would say most, if not all of my patients that are coming in the door, especially if they are having fertility issues, I am screening them for their thyroid. And I'm not just testing TSH, which a lot of practitioners are only doing. It's not enough. And if you're doing, you need to also run those antibodies, like you said, because even if your thyroid hormones are normal, if you have elevated TPO, if you have elevated autoantibodies for the thyroid alone, that can actually cause an issue as well. So making sure that we're being thorough enough and paying attention to, like you said, it's like, what is my patient experiencing and what could be that root cause of it?
Well, and we're talking a lot about women, and I want to make sure we're talking about the dudes too, because I think a lot of
they're half the process.
Right. And like, I see mostly women, so I'm guilty of this. I do really like tend to be women centric, but when we're talking about sperm health, there are nutrients that matter for that too, and those will show up with issues for men if they're low as well. So like low zinc, I think a lot of men are familiar with the importance of zinc for sperm production, spermatogenesis.
Yeah, and testosterone levels as well.
Right. So like, yeah. So a low zinc will also show up in certain individuals with anxiety. Zinc is a very calming mineral, and it helps to balance copper. It actually competes for copper absorption in the body. Copper is very stimulating. So when it's high, it can give people a lot of anxiety. If you're low in zinc, you'll be functionally high in copper, and that can give you this underlying level of like irritability, edginess. This is a test that most doctors don't run. But it's something that you should really be thinking about. And if you've been supplementing with zinc for a really long time, because you're like, heard it on Joe Rogan 2 years ago, and you've been taking 50 milligrams of zinc every night, you need to get your levels checked, because you could also have high zinc and low copper now, which will make it really difficult to concentrate. You'll have a whole other set of issues. So like, again, it's like, don't assume, that these emotional issues are not related to your health, because they really may be. And then same thing, like sperm health is incredibly dependent on antioxidant status in the body, because we're producing, if you're a guy, you're producing sperm. It takes 75 to 100 days, start to finish, for spermatogenesis to occur. And so that whole time, you need to have really good antioxidant status, because those sperm need to be protected from free radicals in the body.
Which
If
they're
they're
really
gonna,
susceptible to.
right. So like, this is why they've done studies where couples who do the Mediterranean diet, I think it's for a couple weeks before they do IVF, it increases IVF success rate by 40 to 65%.
It's huge.
Like, if there was a drug that did this, it would be $1 million,
Yeah.
right? But like, we think the Mediterranean diet works because it's full of plant foods, which are full of antioxidants. You don't get antioxidants from meat. You only get it from plants that grow from the ground. And then it's also very blood sugar balanced. So it keeps your insulin low, your cortisol low, your inflammation low. So God, this is like, hopefully this is a holistic conversation that's making sense to everybody who's listening. But yeah, Dr. Emily, it looked like you wanted to say something a couple seconds ago.
Oh, no, I was just totally agreeing with you. Yeah. I mean, when you're, thinking about, sperm health and, antioxidants and, the diet is like foundational for where this all starts. If your diet's impeccable, great. And there's still so much we can do to support, our men and, the little spermies, from there. But yeah, I mean, your diet needs to be kind of on point for, to get the nutrients that you need. And even then, we have a lot of depleted soils. A lot of the soils that our foods are grown in are not as nutrient dense as what you would like. And so keeping that in mind too, it's like, where are your foods coming from?
Well, guys, Dr. Emily and I had nutrition training in medical school. So we are trained to use food as medicine, right? So you don't have to just take supplements. You can talk with us and we can teach you, like, how do you naturally get more zinc in your diet? Because when you get it from a natural source, it's naturally balanced with copper. So you don't have to worry about this balance, right? Like, that's the beauty of these foods that grow from the earth, is they come kind of pre-packaged with all the cofactors we need to metabolize the nutrients that are in those foods. So it's pretty powerful stuff, but you need a doctor who's really trained in it. So this is something that we both learned. I think the other thing I wanted to chat about too, like, to switch more to an anxiety focus, because I think a lot of people who are trying to conceive, you spend the first 2 weeks of the month, if you're cycling normally and your cycle is like 30 days, right, as a couple, spend the first 2 weeks thinking about fertility and conception and ovulation. Then you spend the next 2 weeks wondering if you got pregnant. Mm-hmm. And it can be this like roller coaster ride, and there can be a lot of anxiety. And so I wanted to make sure that I talk about the physiological parts of anxiety that are tied to fertility. But then I know we wanted to end and talk about managing anxiety by using some mindset and lifestyle aspects as well. So guys, so when you have anxiety, there's a couple things, right? It could be lifestyle related, but also our nervous system is regulated by minerals. So our nervous system runs on electricity, right? And we create electricity in our body by passing minerals or electrolytes across membranes. Certain minerals are more calming than others because they either have an inhibitory effect on our nerves or a stimulating effect on our nerves. And that can actually show up with your mood. So magnesium is a very calming mineral. It's often used to treat women who have PCOS and are struggling with subfertility. And it could just be part of the reason you've got subfertility and anxiety is you've got low magnesium. So it's worth checking.
And it's very commonly, it's one of those minerals that I would say most people are deficient in to begin with, both male and female.
And one of the clues, guys, that you're low in magnesium, so not only will you have anxiety, you might be constipated, you might get muscle cramps, you might have I notice people have a lot of cervical tension with a magnesium deficiency. They get headaches. So it's important, and we can screen you for it, but we just running a nutrient analysis of your diet most times will find you're low. Like you're just not eating the foods that have magnesium.
Yeah.
The other thing is inositol. So inositol is this like, oh, I love it so much. It's like the thing that will stop a panic attack in its tracks. It's amazing. And inositol can increase conception rates in couples who are struggling with PCOS as part of their picture. Increase conception rates by 10% when it's supplemented. So it's pretty powerful. But basically, the main sign with inositol that you're low is anxiety and panic. So if you're somebody who gets panic attacks, yes, the subfertility treatment stress could be part of it, but it could just be that you're low in inositol, and that's why that symptom is popping up. So I want everybody to tune into that as a possibility. And then, like my last one with anxiety, I often look at folate and B6 because they're very involved in making certain neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. And for a lot of women who have anxious depression, so you're depressed, but you're also like thinking on a loop all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're ruminating, you can't really stop. That can be a low serotonin picture. And not only is protein important for making serotonin because we make it from an amino acid tryptophan, but you need enough folate, B12, and B6 to convert it into its active form. And so they've found people who supplement with folate 4 weeks before IVF have successful pregnancy rates that double. So like the control group will get pregnant at a rate of 30%, and the folate supplementation group will get pregnant at a rate of 67%. That's a huge deal, right? So like these are things where, okay, you're going through IVF, like you can still use nutrition to make sure that it works the first time, hopefully.
Yeah, and IVF has low rates anyway, so it's like, why not? Why are all patients not being treated this way? You know what I mean? If you've gotten to that point, this just should be standard.
Well, and I'm talking about IVF just because like there's a ton of literature on that because there's a
Yeah.
ton of money in researching it. But in terms of natural conception too, this is a no-brainer because body needs enough folate to form that neural tube in an embryo.
Yeah.
And I think there is some kind of like natural stop, honestly, for a lot of women. If you don't have enough folate to form a healthy fetus, your body will kind of not let you get pregnant, right? And we could go through all the mechanisms that are involved in that, but you don't want to get pregnant with a folate deficiency.
No.
So fixing that beforehand, I often have clients say to me when they come in the practice, oh my God, I had no idea how nutrient deficient my diet was. And how, like, now that I had to go through your whole intake and list how many symptoms I've got, like, I want to have the healthiest diet possible, clean up my health issues before I get pregnant. And this has given me the time to do that.
Absolutely. That's why, I mean, when I talk to patients about a preconception protocol, having this in place months, like 3 to 4 months prior to conception is really important. Like you're saying, it's like having these nutrients available for when you conceive just amplifies the health of that pregnancy. And you really, like you said, it's like so many patients, you'll put them on this preconception protocol and they're like, I didn't realize how tired I was until I started taking all this, and I feel better. I have more energy. I'm sleeping more soundly. And I didn't realize all women that come to me that are, either trying to get pregnant or have been trying to get pregnant for a while, really most patients actually, we're talking about nutrition status. We're talking about, what vitamins do we need to include? All of my preconception patients are put on a preconception protocol that includes a really good optimal prenatal, to make sure that we are getting in all of the necessary nutrients to, not just for yourself, but for your baby as well.
Yeah. And I think, just in terms of like mindset, if you want to shift over to talking about that, I think what Dr. Emily said is really important, guys. It's like you have this period before you conceive that is incredibly important for the health of your pregnancy and postpartum period and your baby. And because it can take like 26 weeks, right? But in terms of like a primordial follicle to mature in an ovary, it take 100 days for spermatogenesis, day 1 of forming a sperm until it's ready to go. Really, I encourage people, like, with your mindset, look at this as the pregnancy before the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing with postpartum. It's like another 9 months before that baby is independent of mom in terms of like being able to eat food.
Yeah.
And not just subsisting on breast milk or formula. So really, you're looking at like 3 times, 27 months, not just 9 months. And so to kind of giving yourself that mindset can be really nice because it takes the pressure off having to do things soon, now, immediately. And you just say, you know what? No, I'm going to give myself 9 months to really nourish my own body so that then I can create a really fully nourished human and nourish that human as well. And that can take a lot of pressure off when you kind of take that more long-term perspective, instead of just focusing on like, okay, tomorrow I'm ovulating, like we need to do this the next day. And then hopefully we get pregnant this month. It's like, okay, I'm going to give myself 9 months here. And you're learning to become a parent in a different way, right? Like if you don't even know how to care for your own body adequately yet, you're not cooking healthy food, you're not sleeping, you're not exercising, it will only make you a better parent if you learn how to do those things before you have an infant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can attest to that. My first I had when I was super young, and I was like barely able to take care of myself, and now that he just turned 12, and I had my third, a year ago. She's a year and a half now. And my parenting style, first off, is completely different. The way that I take care of my kids is completely different. And, having that, ability to just take care of yourself as an adult is really important, and I do want to mention too that like we're talking about, a really sort of like slow down process. Like you said, it's like so many women are like, I'm going to get pregnant now because I'm running out of time. And I think it's important to also mention that I think women need to start being taught, whether that's by their OBs, if that's some sort of health class in school, someone needs to have this conversation around, do you plan on having kids? Do you plan on having your own children? What does a family look like for you? Because your fertility, at the end of the day, if you choose to have your own children, biological children, is going to be impacted by the things that you're putting in your bodies, by how you're living your life, and the time frame in which you're choosing to have kids. And what are your choices around that? Do you at some point in your 20s or early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, should you be looking at egg preservation? Should you freeze your eggs? If not, that's fine, and whatever, but like that needs to probably be a conversation, since a lot of women are choosing to have kids later, which is totally fine. That's like, to each their own, but that conversation should be there, because I think a lot of patients who are going through IVF are these, not say all, but some patients are older because they chose to wait longer. And then all of a sudden they're like, I don't understand why I'm not fertile anymore, because nobody ever taught them that, your eggs kind of have a shelf life and there is an expiration date to them. I know that you can probably speak to a lot of this, but, when we're talking about what does a family look like, the conversation also needs to be had with patients of like, what does your family look like? Like, what does, we all sort of have this ideal picture of, this quintessential family, and, they all came out of your vagina, and, they're your own children. And
yeah,
it's not the case, you know what I mean? And I think slowly times are catching up to this, but I don't think enough people realize like they don't have to necessarily be your own biological children, whether or not you're doing adoption or you're doing like donor eggs, donor sperm. Maybe you're doing other things that, you are acting as a parent while not necessarily being a parent.
yeah. I love that. Well, and you said something earlier that was kind of like, I thought I heard you say something like, okay, what are your plans to grow your family? Like, is fertility or natural conception part of that, right? Because that's just one option for growing your family. And there are so many, dozens, right? Like you can take in a foster child, you can become a caregiver for an elderly parent or a grandparent. And so many, I work with a lot of people who are like kind of more millennial age or up until like their mid 50s. And nobody really had conversations with them about like, hey, you're probably going to need to take care of your mom at some point. Have you budgeted for that? Like, is that part of your plan to grow your family? Because it's probably coming in the next like 10 to 30 years. Like, and so as you're thinking about expanding your family, is that factored into your equation? And I think we live in this society where like Instagram and Facebook, like we have all these pregnancy announcements, and we still have this very heteronormative, monogamy-centered idea about like what it means to grow a family. And it's just not true. I mean, like 55% of marriages end in divorce. We have a ton, most families now are some sort of blending, like from like first marriage, second marriage, like everyone's coming together. There are 100,000 children right now in just the US who are waiting for adoptive parents. And I don't know if you guys know this, I have been exposed to the foster care system throughout my life because I now have custody of my younger sister. And so I didn't know this really before our family was introduced to the foster care system, but it's tremendously difficult to even have parental rights terminated and be waiting for adoption. That means these kids have been through the ringer.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
there are other kids in foster care whose parents are still working through the system trying to get custody. These kids who are waiting for adoption have no one else. And so I love like making sure that I'm talking to all of my people who are looking to grow their families. And it's not just people of reproductive age, and it's not just people who are infertile, because adoption and foster care and being a caregiver or a mentor or a soccer coach, like it shouldn't just be something that you do when you can't have your own kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Like,
think it should be
yeah,
an option that, you know, at some point, maybe you do consider just outright, even if you are perfectly fertile, you have no problem having children. Is it something that you've thought about? You know what I mean? Is that part of what what you envision your family dynamic looking like?
yeah, absolutely. And a lot of you got like some of my patients. So I am very pro adoption as a first option, which sounds weird as somebody who helps people optimize their fertility, but it's not for me because optimizing fertility is about optimizing health for most of my clients, and their values are what matters to me. But I try to talk to everybody about adoption and foster care and getting involved in the community, because it's also incredibly good for your mental health to help others, whatever that looks like. And so I encourage a lot of my clients, hey, if you're spending a lot of time scrolling past pictures of these like man or woman with their 2 bio kids, like go follow other people who are doing it differently. Like go follow, I love Foster the Family on Instagram. I love that family. They take in so many foster kids they've adopted. They run a nonprofit. Pretty much any organizations that they promote or follow will also be good for you to follow. You can just follow Adopt US Kids, Together We Rise, adopt.com, and start to make sure that you are really taking control of the media that you intake, so you actually have an accurate picture of what the real world looks like. Because if you are just scrolling past pregnancy announcements and gender reveals, like you're going to feel crappy if you're
Yeah.
treating sexually. Like that's not a good idea. Stop doing that. Look at other things. And also part of this mindset shift that can help you stay resilient while you're going through subfertility treatment is having other things that you think about besides natural conception. So Dr. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about mindset? I know you have a lot of things mindfulness wise that you talk to people about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely, the 2-week wait with, that period, that dreaded period between ovulation and is your period going to start, can just be absolutely maddening. I've been through it myself, and I just, for myself personally, it almost drove me crazy. Every single month, I felt like a psychopath waiting for my period to start. And then once it started, it took, a few days for me to come to terms with the fact that your period started and that you weren't pregnant. And, there's so many other couples that are going through this. And so, what I try and impart upon, my patients, and I think bringing up the fact that, like, stop scrolling through pregnancy announcements. I think social media has its place. I have a love-hate relationship with it, but really just stop. Don't. Just don't. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's helping you in some way, if it's causing stress, get it out of your life. First of all. Second of all, I think, having I'm not going to say a list because I don't, you don't need to like check boxes here, but having something to do and getting your mind out of it, which is hard. Don't get me wrong. It can be really hard actually. But get active,
Yes.
find an exercise routine that works for you, that is healthy. Does that include yoga, running, walking? Does it include weightlifting? Whatever that looks like for you, Pilates, you name it. what does a healthy exercise routine look like for you? We've talked about how, you know, healthy exercise is really good. It helps to do a lot of things in the body. It helps to increase dopamine levels in the body. So, you know, just it can calm you naturally. It can bring clarity and focus into your life. And so instead of having those racing thoughts, it can slow those down so that you're able to sort of go about your day with less stress. It can decrease the amount of cortisol overall in the body. Stress and exercise initially is, you know, going to cause some stress in the body. Is going to cause the elevation in cortisol because it's what it does. But then afterwards, you're going to have like that dopamine spike and everything's just going to calm down and you're going to always feel so much better. You know what I mean? Like I love working out because of the how I feel afterwards. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, ugh, I got to work out. But I always just am like, I feel so much better when I'm done. You know, finding an exercise routine can always, even if it's just walking 30 minutes a day, can be really just clarifying for you and calming.
Yeah.
Finding new forms of intimacy beyond the bedroom. You know, sex is great. I love sex, you know, whatever that looks like for you. But finding new ways of communication and of intimacy between you and your partner, I think can not only help prepare you for potential pregnancy in the future and having kids and just opening up a new door for you, and just in general having a healthy relationship, you know, but it can also just help get your mind off of things. You know, there's so many like new companies that I'm seeing that are like having these like card games that you can buy where you can do, you know, it's like you each pull a question and it's like things you probably wouldn't normally ask each other. But they can just open up new ways of learning about each other, which can be really important. You know, communication is actually one of those like 5 live languages. And I love that book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I recommend it to most of my patients, especially those who maybe feel like their relationship could use a little work, because I think it's just really eye-opening and it can really just help to understand different forms of intimacy and different ways to communicate with your partner.
I love that.
Yeah. So, you know, it's all about like celebrating the success as a couple and forming that relationship between you and your partner outside of conception. You know, it sort of takes that edge off a little bit of, and the pressure of you and your partner, because, you know, fertility and, you know, health and it all impacts your relationship with your partner. And so being able to come together at the end of the day and knowing, you know, how strong that bond can be can often just, you know, be really empowering.
Yeah. And guys, I mean, that you really only have like a 6-day window in the whole month to get pregnant, right? Like the 5 days before ovulation and then ovulation, it's a 24-hour period, boom, you go. So make a mental commitment. Those are your 6 days to think about conception. The rest of the time, go think about other things. Get out of your head into your body, start to move. Because the other thing that exercise does, it's like so good for your mood, but also it increases blood flow to your pelvic organs, right? So all of your sex organs need blood to get nutrients and oxygen and work optimally. And so many Westerners are sitting down all day. They're sedentary. They might go for a walk for 10 minutes and they think they're done. It's like, no, parenting, first of all, is an athletic event, as you know, Dr. Emily, from having your own little kids, chasing after them. But pregnancy and birth are incredibly demanding athletic events.
Absolutely.
And we don't talk about it that way with women, we at all, and we should, because you're really training, like, not only are you weightlifting because you're walking around with a bowling ball on you, and your organs are all moving, but like so many women are not focused on being strong to give birth in a healthy way. Right? So focus on that, right? Like go work out together, work up a sweat, like that'll get your libido up too. Go to bed early, you know, like cook each other really nourishing foods, put on sexy music in the background. It can be fun, and like your whole life should not be about this. And I would say, like, if you're somebody who is desperate to grow your family and you have the time and the resources, you can start right now. I think we talked about this, Dr. Emily, and you said something that I loved when we were prepping for this, where you said, like, hey, I can guarantee you, like, if you want to grow your family, you will grow it. It's possible, right? And one of those avenues might be natural conception, but because there are other options, you never have to worry that you're not going to be able to grow your family.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was beautiful.
Well, and I think, you know, like we've talked about, I think we get so caught up in the baby has to come from me, and there's so much pressure on that, and which I totally understand, being a parent myself. But then I think because we don't have the conversation with people that there's other ways to do it, there's other ways to be a parent, that we don't even think about it, and we should. And I think it's really important for not just couples who are having problems trying to conceive, but like you said, it's like, why aren't we not bringing it up with all couples? Why not?
Because like, we sat in the same reproductive endocrinology classes in medical school, and really it's because this subfertility thing is put in a medical box. And so we're only taught the medical ways to deal with it, like pharmaceuticals, surgery, nutrient therapy, whatever. But it's not just medical, right? Like it's also societal. And so we are both doing our own work kind of, I think, to really broaden this conversation. And it starts way before medical school, but often medical professionals are only equipped with a prescription pad, and some imaging or some lab work. And they're not equipped to have these conversations either. So it's going to take people being really intentional about changing this for it to shift. But I think it is shifting. I see a shift happening in our culture that is very exciting. So hopefully we can both continue to be part of that. And yeah, if you guys have questions, you can reach out to Dr. Emily and I anytime. Like, I think both of us are so passionate about this. We're happy to answer them.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. So how can people can get in touch with you on Instagram or your website?
Yeah, I have a free feature through my practice called a 15-minute discovery call that you guys can schedule. I think Dr. Emily is very well practiced in the fertility optimization sphere. If you are looking for a nutrient analysis of your diet, like maybe that is something that you could come to me for if you're in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm based right now. So it's just www.drkatehenry.com. Doctor is spelled out, or you can just go to Instagram. It's just Dr. Dr. Kate Henry, and contact me there. But I'm happy to chat with anybody for a couple minutes just to see if there's anything I can offer you on your journey.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And you're such a wealth of knowledge, especially for, neurotransmitter support and, the nutritional side of things, and being able to really break it down. It's just amazing to talk to you about that. And of course, I love, talking to you about adoption and fostering, because again, you have such a wealth of knowledge. And it's just, I think it's, like we were saying, it's something that not enough people are thinking about, and maybe we should be.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. I can't wait to send my patients to you for cycle mapping. We'll do another IG live on that. But yeah,
Awesome.
they're definitely lucky to have you. So thank you for having me on here today.
Thank you. All right.